I was going to ask you too. I'm glad you were talking so much about in betweening because I had quite a few questions about that specifically. Is there, because it is kind of an entry level job, is there much creative freedom there? I mean, you're not choosing like breakdowns, are you, or are you?
No, really, it's all about execution. And for anyone who be realistic, right? If you choose this as a living, um, there are little creative glimpses, but it's not a super creative job. It's teamwork. It takes so many people to make this happen. And so a lot of it is just being really good at executing it. And it's creative for very few. And then, look, everybody has somebody to answer to. Your animator has the director to answer to. The director has the producer to answer to. The producer has the studio to answer to. So, even if you're a producer or director, you're kind of, you're at the will of what the studio wants and maintaining their brand. They built this brand up for, boy, in 2023, this company will be 100 years old. They've spent time building this brand up. So, you have to, it's all honoring that brand and, finding your spots where you can be creative and add to it. But I think, don't go in disillusioned that you're going to be like the next Walt Disney necessarily by working at Walt Disney. If you want to be the next Walt Disney, you got to, start your own thing. When Walt was growing up, and of course I admired this man a lot, but the predominant studio was the Fleischer studio. They were making those Popeye cartoons that I talked about. They were the big thing in the business. But Walt didn't go work for Fleischer. Walt was like, I'm not a follower. I got to do my own thing. Like he made his own thing. So if you want to be creative, it's kind of a balance. You got to, you work to kind of be realistic and make a living, and it's collaboration, which also means sometimes arguing, sometimes not getting your own way. And if you have that artistic itch, you got to kind of still do that on your own.
Fascinating. That makes a lot of sense. Another question that's a little bit just in terms of roles in betweening and things. Animating, I think, specifically hand drawing animation, takes a lot of different kinds of animators. You have the in-betweener, you have assistant animator, animation assistant, lead animator, supervising animator. Can you kind of break down like who are these people and what do they do?
Yeah, absolutely. Because boy, it can get confusing, just like you mentioned. It's kind of broken up into two factions, at least when it was classical Disney animation, right? So you had rough animation and then you had cleanup animation. So it started with rough. They got the storyboard, they watch the reel, they know how the performance needs to be. So you have a lead animator who like, I'm going to be the head of this team. So Glenn Keane would be, I'm going to be the head of the Pocahontas character. And then John Pomeroy, okay, I'm going to handle John Smith. And so every character had a lead animator and then their team of animators under them. This is all in rough animation. So an animator would rough their scene out, do, like I said earlier, kind of the poses that describe the performance, get a hint at the timing. No, that's not being fair. Being precise with the timing and drawing like nailing the performance down. But then wanting to move on to the next scene would have a rough in-betweener that would do not the cleanup art, the rough in-betweens on that scene that the rough animator is working on. So now he can go work on another scene, he or she can go work on another scene, get those rough in-betweens back. Okay, let's pencil test, meaning like let's shoot it under a camera and see how it's playing out with all the in-betweens added. And now that it's smooth, and we're going to refine the timing as we go, because I did my best guess, but now that I see the in-betweens added, we're going to refine it and get the timing just perfect.
Oh, wow.
And then do another scene. So those two would work together, show the director, get approval. All right, here's some notes for your scene from the director. Let's go back to our drawing boards and we'll kind of tweak things and address the notes. Once everything is approved, all right, we love it. We cut it into the movie and it's playing perfectly. That scene's approved. Now it goes to that other faction, the cleanup department. And what they're going to do is the animator couldn't spend time doing an hour on one drawing. That would be crazy. That would take forever. So now it's going to go to the cleanup department and they're going to take the cleanup lead is going to be the lead of that character. They're going to assign the scenes to like, oh boy, this one's a close-up. We better give this to our like A player. Oh, this one, Pocahontas, is really small. We can give that to kind of maybe of a newer player. And that lead now will start cleaning up the main poses like the animator did the main poses. And then with all the in-betweens, now they're cleaned up to a fine line and everything's described perfectly so that it can be cell painted. And now we're going to give those to cleanup betweeners, and they'll do the in-betweens. And those are, that was my first job. That's the kind of the entry level. It's all been figured out by the rough animator. It's kind of been pared down by the cleanup animator. Now you're just kind of like, we got to execute. We got to be a team, and we got to get, a million drawings done for this movie. So that's kind of how the two departments work together.
Okay. And is it necessary if you're interested in sort of climbing the ladder to go through each one of those positions on each side, or?
Well, for me, because I didn't, like I said, like a great education wasn't going to be an option for me. So I got in any way I could, and they needed cleanup in betweeners, and that's how I got in. But I would say most of the animators never went through cleanup. They went straight from drawing and animating and figuring out movement, and then getting that job into rough animation. It wasn't many that made the crossover from cleanup into animation, but I always wanted to be an animator. So that was just kind of my means to my end. But I would say that's not generally the steps that are taken.
And then one more question on in-betweening. I'd be curious to know, like, how can you tell, like, what makes a good in-betweener and what makes kind of a weaker in-betweener, where you think like, well, you got more work to do?
Well, gosh, one thing is because you're seeing hundreds of drawings go by that give the illusion that it's one drawing that is moving. So maintaining that line quality, especially when I said on Pocahontas, it was thick to thin. And it was the same kind of thing on Aladdin too, especially on the genie. So you have to maintain that line quality, and the way it even tapers off, it has to be consistent from drawing to drawing to drawing. So it'll look like one drawing that's moving. You can't have any flickering that are blowing your illusion. We don't want the audience to forget the story and be distracted that they're watching moving drawings. You want them to believe it's one drawing that's moving. So it's getting that line quality to be consistent. And, that's, you use your light box, you check the drawings on top of each other. You roll your drawings to see how they're rolling together. To some degree, maybe not for a cleanup animator, but for a rough in-betweener, kind of understanding movement. And, Bud Hester at that union class brought this up really early on. And he was bringing it up like, well, computers will never do in-betweens because, and, he got proven wrong. But the point that he made is very, very valid, where he's like, imagine a hand catching a ball, and you have a drawing that's coming toward it, and then it's going to capture it. But he's like, a bad in-betweener would have the glove closing as the ball is coming to it, because they would just be not thinking, and they would just do an in-between to that motion. But somebody that really understands motion would know, no, that the hand will stay still until the ball hits it, and then it will react to it. So there are little things like that. It just knowing movement, just being observant. And so many of my mentors said, be observant. And it took something simple like that, took years to really kind of understand, like, be observant, watch people, watch how movement happens, watch how people show emotions. And you go, well, I am watching. No, but are you really watching? Are you really analyzing it? And that thing is very much what Bud Hester told me is so important to remember. Yeah, the hand will not react until it's hit, and then it'll react to it. So that would make the difference between a really good in-betweener and one who's maybe not, still has some growing to do.